Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Tuesday, the 13th of December. My name is Rachel and my pronouns are she and her. And today I'm not here to talk about what I talk about as a priest. I'm here to talk about what I talk about as a citizen, as a person, as a voting member of society, and my frustration level at some of the decisions made and the ways in which they are made in our current situation, the way in which we live and move and have our being as Canadians in politics. I'm not complaining about that. I love the way our system works. We have balances, we have checks and balances, we have opportunities to debate, we have opportunities to come back and say, you know what, we don't agree with that, so we elect a new government in. And come May 29th, 2023, I'm sincerely hoping that we do just that. Last week, I woke up in the morning, late last week, to a text message from my sister who lives in Ontario. So she's also up really awful early in the morning. But I got a message. I was up at 6:30 and there was a text saying, "What is with your premiers?" I thought, oh dear, I better watch the news. Turns out that the new premier of Alberta made the decision and had it pass through the members of the assembly, our provincial government, that we have this new legislation in process that would limit eliminate, I don't even know how to phrase this. It would allow the province to override, I guess, things that the federal government are the Ottawa, the government that we have all, including Albertans, have elected into Parliament, those decisions that are made on a national level. We have wonderful things like we have universal health care, and we have policing, and we have all kinds of things that are influenced and decisions are made on the national level that allow then, we have transfer payments and abilities for the federal government to assist the provincial and territorial governments to allow those things to be put in place. And it means that we have a pretty standard way of living across the country with all kinds of variants, of course. But we have some things that we can sort of take for granted, that this is, if you live in Alberta or Ontario or Nova Scotia, all places I've lived, you've got a pretty set expectation of what will happen. And our current premier and her government, I am not, just for the record, I am not a big fan of referring to governments by the name of the premier or the prime minister. I believe that when you are elected to parliament, you become the government for the whole country. Hence, I don't like to refer to our federal government, our national, like the group that's in Ottawa that represents the whole of Canada. I don't like referring to them as the Trudeau government or the Liberal government. They are the government that was elected, and they have to work for every single Canadian, regardless of whether those Canadians voted for them or not, and regardless of what party affiliation they may or may not have. They are responsible for serving every constituent, regardless. And I feel the same way about the provincial. I'm struggling in our province because we have a premier who was not elected at an election. A small group of people, a relatively small group of people, chose their new party leader, who automatically became the premier until such time as we have a provincial election. And I believe it's been called for May 29th, 2023. So 6 months from now, give or take. And at that point, we can then either elect her in, if she is indeed still the leader of the party, to be our premier, or we can elect someone else. You can imagine where my leaning is going right now, I bet. Last week, early in the morning that my sister texted me, "What's with your premiers?" The government of the day pushed through the third reading of a bill that talks about essentially working toward making sure that the Alberta government, the provincial government, can ignore, I think that's the best way to put it, federal legislation things that they could indicate to municipalities that they don't have to live by the standards set by the federal government, but that they need to live by the provincial government, which puts everybody in a kind of a pickle. What do you do? If do you choose this most stringent of the two? Do you how do you, if you're the mayor of Calgary or Edmonton or Wainwright, how do you determine which body you're going to follow? I would hope that we would all choose to follow the one that would mean the most safety and the best possible policies for each of the citizens of Alberta, regardless of age, party affiliation, whether they vote or can vote or not, taxpayers or not. I'm not hopeful that that would be the case. Part of the frustration for me is that this went through with my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding from what I've read is that this went through third reading, but the government, or the party that has the power in the Legislative Assembly, was able to put forward motions that limited debate, and also that the third reading passed at 1 a.m. I don't know about you, but I am not able to concentrate well at 1 a.m. There's a reason why we have proper working hours and opportunities to take bathroom breaks and go and have a meal and sleep. There was really, I cannot find any reason why, if this legislation was so important and so obviously the will of all the people, why this had to happen so quickly. Why could this not have had more debate? Why could it not have happened during regular hours, business hours? Why did it need to be rammed through? My concern here is that we are beginning to see unhealthy style politics. We've seen it elsewhere in the world, where individuals have become very right-wing, very, very concerned about themselves. Lately, I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I've been referring to and others refer to as silos. That, for instance, in my ministry, I am the priest in 3 congregations, which means I can't only think about one congregation. I can't have 3 silos and think, well, I'm only going to do this here, and then I'm going to do something different over here, because they all interact. Even if it's simply because I am a shared priest among them, they all have relationships with each other. The ministry I do in Wainwright is not completely and utterly separated from the ministry I do in Edgerton or Vermilion. Necessity says that those 3 things are going to interact in some ways, shapes, or forms. There will, of course, be individual things that are unique to each congregation. But the beauty of collaborating and doing ministry together is that those silos kind of get broken down and become more communities in which we migrate and we move back and forth, and we share the best of each community is shared. And those things that are more difficult, we then beef each other up. We help one another to do better in those things, or to teach lessons and say, hey, this didn't work for you, but this is what we did and it worked better for us. So would you like to try that? There's a beauty in breaking out of silos or individual arenas and coming together as communities. And there seems to be a political bent in Alberta that really came to the fore during the convoy of last January. That's really showing us that there are some people, they are very vocal people, but I do not believe they are the majority of the people. I think they are the people who speak the language that gets the press. And they are speaking loudly, vociferously about their opinions, but they're not asking other people's opinions that would differ from them. There are some people who are speaking loudly that we need to be our own independent place. We need to not have to deal with Ottawa. We need to not have to deal with things. There are people who think that our pension plans should change. For those people who are in pension and who are recognizing that, especially during a time of high inflation and the cost of living being is what it is, and the cost of hydro and heat to heat your homes, the cost of food, our pension plans, to break them apart would only make more people suffer. The idea of having a pension plan that people have contributed to and has a big base and that we can all work together for, I find to be a healthy thing. We don't need to have a stronger a stronger, wealthier upper class, and then a more disparate, weaker, poorer middle and lower class. I really believe, again, those silos, having a strong, 1% that has all the power, the trickle down doesn't trickle. It stops. It's like there's a dam. It doesn't go anywhere. It stays there. And the rest of us are like, hello, we need help. Our politics need to recognize that. We need health care. People can't afford, they can barely afford, lots of people can't afford the health care that they need right now, even though we have universal health care. Things like the cost of prescriptions going through the roof and things like that. It's hard to find a doctor. What happens if we go to a 2-tier healthcare where if you can afford it, you can go out and purchase the services of a doctor? What doctors are going to stay in a system that overworks them, underpays them, treats the medical care world like it's garbage? And then, like, who would stay there? If you were a medical care person, a doctor, a nurse, a technician, if you could go and work for a clinic that gave you Monday to Friday hours, you never had to work overtime, you didn't have to work weekends or holidays, and you got paid a really good wage, or you were going to pay, you had to work in hospitals, you had to work like during the pandemic, but you couldn't go home, you had to take care of people, you at your risk of your own health. Who's going to choose that? Some people will, absolutely. But really, when it comes down to it, that idea that we would switch those things up and say, good for all is not good for all, because it's not good for the few. It's ridiculous. Our province, I really believe, needs to focus on how we can break the silos and come together in community. And part of that, I think, means that our government needs to be aware that if you need to do it in the dark of night, maybe it shouldn't be done. If it's really good for the people, and it's really what the people will want and will benefit from, which is what I believe that our elected officials are called to do, then you should be able to do it in the bright, clear light of day. No cloak and dagger, no threats, open debate, as long as that needs to happen. Working conciliation, work with other people who are also elected to represent people. I am not scared of where Alberta might go, because I have great faith and hope in the electorate of Alberta. And when the time comes next spring, and we go to the polling stations and we cast our ballots, I believe we will do the right thing. But I also believe that right now I have to pray for the UPC government, because it is not the government of all Albertans. It certainly isn't the government for me. Now, I know that this will probably have a lot of people up in arms because you don't agree with me, and that's okay. That's kind of the point. Nobody gets to shove their opinions down another's throat and say, there you go, it's done. And that's what this is about. You can disagree with me. I ask you to disagree with me respectfully, but you can disagree with me and I'll disagree with you. But as long as we have the opportunity to have that debate, that's a good thing. When we close the debate, or we state we're going to do this in the middle of the night when no one is paying attention, that's a problem. So, just some thoughts I have, not as a priest, not even from a Christian perspective specifically, but as a person who loves where I live and loves the people that I live with and wants to be able to be here and be a proud member of Albertan society for a long time to come. Have a good day. God bless. And I'll see you tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel. And I'll make it more churchy.